Be respectful, be true to yourself and live your dream. That's all really I have to offer because that's what my parents gave me.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Life of Dad Show. Here in the Life of Dad Show, we talk with athletes, actors, entrepreneurs, CEOs, musicians, entertainers who've all made a name for themselves, but the one thing that is most important to them is being a dad. On this week's edition of the Life of Dad Show, I'm talking with former soccer star Tony Meola. We talk about soccer, the current state of the game. We talk a little bit about fatherhood. We talk about a lot of other great things. Hope you guys enjoy it. So let's get into it. Here's my interview with soccer star Tony Meola. What's going on, everybody? Eddy here for the Life of Dad Show and online. I'm very happy to have Tony Meola. Thanks for taking the time to chat with me, Tony. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing all right. Thanks so much for the time.
Yeah, man. A big fan of your work, of course, when you were playing soccer. And, of course, now what you do, especially with your Sirius radio show. And also, before we get into fatherhood and soccer, I also want to talk about the good things you're doing with Allstate. You're teaming up with them for the Allstate Day of Play. And I love the fact that you and Allstate kind of go around, give cities a chance in our country to kind of celebrate their love for sport. Talk a little bit about what people can expect from this campaign, sir.
Yeah, so I've been with Allstate for quite some time now, in and around national team games, and this is the first year we're going to do. We've done various events around the country in sort of in clinic formats and giveaways and going in and fixing up fields. And this year we're starting the initiative, the Day for Play initiative, which is essentially a program that says, hey, come out and play. Like, this is your day to come out and just enjoy the game, just be around people who enjoy the game. And so we'll be doing this throughout the entire Gold Cup. Today we'll be at the Minnesota State Capitol, and it's the kickoff of our event. We've done one in Pasadena, which was a huge success, and we got a lot of things going on through the event. One of the cool things, I always love, giving things away into the community. We have a soccer ball exchange, and where people can take their old soccer balls and come in and exchange them for a new soccer ball. We've done stuff like this for years now with Allstate, and we'll also have a ticket raffle. So it's a good opportunity just to be around people that just enjoy the game and want to be around the game.
Nice, man. I really love what you guys are doing with Allstate. And, of course, we'll put up links here at Life of Dad, how people can kind of check that out. Especially for you. I know you're a dad. You probably see it as well, as all parents do, the battle between tech, video games, and also having kids go out and play. I'm 40. When I was a kid, I'd be outside playing until the lights go on, playing basketball, baseball, soccer, whatever the case may be. And I know it's on the parents. I'm not saying that, we need to look for you, like, how do we get our kids to play more? But for you, with your experience as a parent, and also what you've seen throughout the country with kids playing and all that stuff, how do you kind of create a healthy balance, having kids enjoy the tech, but also get outside and play?
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of getting away from the video games. And my kids had them. We never really had hard rules that says, I hear a lot of parents say, oh, our kids only play 1 hour a week, and we never had rules like that because our kids always wanted to be outside and play, and they wanted to be out with their friends, and whether it was kicking a soccer ball or whatever it was, they just enjoyed being outside more than they did being inside. And it was just always encouraged. I didn't know. You said you're 40. Well, I'm 10 years older than you. We certainly didn't have video games like our kids do now. We didn't have a phone to look at. Your only entertainment was to get outside, hope that there were some friends that were outside that had a ball or a bat or whatever it was, and get out and enjoy the weather a little bit. And that's, again, it goes back to what we're trying to do here with this Day for Play, is just get outside and get off the phones and get away from the video games for a little bit, as you say. And as you mentioned, as a dad, it's always when the kid wants to play video games, when all his buddies are online or whatever. I don't know much about them. I just hear about them. I don't play video games, but it's hard to say no to them. But we've been really lucky, and I think only because we've encouraged it so much.
Nice. And I appreciate that, because that's, again, you want to encourage that. You want to make sure that your kids are at the point like, hey, I want to go outside. And I think it also starts with, parents kind of leading by example and going out there. And, and it just kind of ties in with Allstate, getting, kids excited for sports and getting them out there. And, of course, getting a chance to see you. And I love the fact that kids can exchange their old soccer ball for a new one, which I think is great, too. You host a radio show on Sirius XM. You talk all things soccer. From the time that you stopped playing to now, do you like the way the game is being played? Has there been an evolution? Has there been a change, or has it kind of been staying the same?
Yeah, there's evolution certainly on the science side, monitoring your body and knowing, how much the workload should be, and monitoring injuries and all of that. So there's always going to be an evolution in that part of it. I don't know that I look at the game today. I don't think I'm that far removed that I look at the game today and go, nobody from our era could play in this one. And you see that in some sports. Sometimes I watch, sports highlights from, other sports 50 years ago, and I think, gosh, those guys would never compete. Then I go back and, slap myself a little bit and go, you know what, if they had all the technology that we had, they would be equally as good, and maybe better in some cases. But, yeah, I like where it's going. Certainly love what's happened with the league. When you talk about the national team, it's in a I don't know if I call it a rough period right now as much as I call it a transition period. Went a little bit over a year without having a full-time manager. Then you get a new manager that comes in, gets 4 games under his belt, and if we're being honest, it hasn't. The start of it was okay. The last couple of weeks has not been good. I can understand if fans are a little bit worried, a little bit concerned. Me, myself, I'm not close to hitting the panic button yet. But I will say this, from the day we didn't qualify for the World Cup, things changed. And the way we look at the Gold Cup changed, at least the way I did. I think it's a tournament where you have to win the tournament. You have to certainly get to the finals. The assumption is that Mexico will be the opponent in the final, which would be nice to see. And you've got to, I think at that point, you got to think about winning the Gold Cup, because you've got to get the fans back on your side. You got to get your team believing. Maybe we've lost that a little bit along the way, but when you look at the young kids we have coming up, it's a pretty exciting prospect for sure.
Nice, Tony. And one more question before we get into fatherhood. I hear this all the time on different shows, especially sports talk radio shows, where they talk about the interest of soccer, and especially the people that I talk to in my field, with talking with dads, coaches, moms about football clubs. You see a lot more organizations starting things around different cities around the country. I feel like there's an uptick in interest in soccer, maybe over the other sports out there. What's your take on that?
Yeah, there's an uptick for sure. The numbers continue to grow. I get to see it sort of at the highest level with youth national team players, and I think what we've seen is that pool has really grown. We used to, when we used to look at national teams, youth national teams, full national teams, there was never a pool of 50 guys that you could choose from at each age group. You were kind of, at some points, you were kind of looking at who was going to be, 21st, 22nd, 23rd guy on your roster. Now, people are fighting for those. And I think what that's sort of a product of, it was a lot of things, but one of them is the growth at the younger level, where guys are pushing each other, kids are pushing each other. When you've got more players, you're doing something right at the younger levels. We got some really good coaches in this country. Some of them are just dads that have played the game. That never happened. When I grew up, that's all we have. Now you got guys really concerned about going and getting education on coaching. We never had any of that stuff back in the day, or we didn't have a lot of it. There were some. We just didn't have as much as we have now. And I think that's all part of the evolution. Hopefully it continues to go that way.
Nice. Thanks so much for sharing that. And of course, here at Life of Dad, we like to get everybody's take on fatherhood. Talk about when you found out you're going to be a dad for the first time, Tony. What was going through your mind?
I was driving west on Route 78 in New Jersey, going to our home at that point in Belle Meade, when my wife told me, and it was the thrill of my life. I had no idea, and it's one of those days that changes your life. You think about things differently, you do things differently. Of course, when you eventually have, I was the guy who had to be there to deliver my first child. So that's what I did. I actually was in Dallas, and we were playing Dallas, and I got the phone call that it was time, and I left, and I missed the game. I actually watched the game from the hospital bedroom down in Dallas, and it's a great recollection for sure. But yeah, it's one of those days, as you mentioned, that changes your entire life.
Nice, Tony. Talk about some of the core values your family looks to instill into your kids as they're growing up.
Well, with regards to the way that we want them to live their life, we want them to be able to, to be free to go, live their dreams, do what they want to do. I got kids that play college sports. I got one that's a sophomore in high school that's going to play college baseball as well. I'd like to sit back, and we're at the point, we did this with my oldest son. We did it with my daughter. Now we're doing my youngest. I don't ever want to squash their dreams. If I think there's a school, it's one's better than the other to go to, I give advice, but I don't ever want to say, hey, this is the choice for you. I just want them to make their own choices. Yeah. Just because, my parents allowed me to I had a lot of options when I was coming out of high school, and my parents allowed me to make a choice, and it worked out in my case. And I think it's a great experience. Just be true to themselves. I got 3 really good kids, likable kids. They can go into any sort of setting and feel comfortable talking to people. We're big on greeting everyone that they meet, properly. And we used to have friends on our block when I was playing in Kansas City. Some of their friends, they were in like the 10 to 12-year-old age while we were living there, and they would come in the house and wouldn't say hi to my wife or myself, not because they were being rude. They just wanted to go play video games downstairs, and we would actually kick them out of the house and say, go back outside the door and let's do this all over again. And everyone used to joke, and I get parents now, our friends in Kansas, that say, it was the best lesson you ever gave our kids, that our kids ever had. And just little things. Be respectful, be true to yourself and live your dreams. That's all really I have to offer, because that's what my parents gave me.
Great thing right there. And also kind of bleeding into that, what you just said right there, piggyback, and what is one big piece of advice you'd offer to new dads?
To new dads?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Well, there's no book, right? And we have 3 kids that were raised exactly the same. They ate the same. They did the same things. They have the same values, but they're 3 completely different kids that love each other. They can't stand being away from each other. And the one positive part about technology is they keep in touch with each other 24 hours a day. Yeah. The advice, just enjoy it, man. I told my kids that my boys will tell you, I made them promise me in a car one day. And if you ask them, I said to them, you just as I spend a lot of time with my kids, and I've been lucky that I had a job that, when we were playing, you could be home at 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, where some parents were coming home at 5 and 6 o'clock in the afternoon. Not a lot of days off and no off season. So I was able to spend a lot of time. I said, you just make sure you spend as much or more time with your kids as I've spent with you over the years, and you'll be a great dad. That's the only real fatherly advice I gave them. They're not fathers yet, thank God. They'll get there one day. And that's if you ask them, they'll tell you. Randomly I'll ask, especially my youngest one. We'll be in a car and I'll say, hey, you remember the advice I gave you? And he'll be like, come on, Dad, how can we forget? You ask me all the time. Nice. So it's a fun time. I don't do well with them being out of the house in college, not because I don't want them to be out. I miss them every day. So. Yeah. They may feel like I'm bugging them every now and then, but it's a little bit more about me than it is about them.
That's awesome, Tony. Thanks so much for sharing that. Now we're going to end off with a Life of Dad quick 5. Favorite family movie is? Favorite
family movie. That's a good one. As kids, they always used to watch Cheaper by the Dozen. Oh, nice. I don't know if they would all think that's I don't know if they would think now, if you asked them that was the favorite family one. That's the one I remember sitting down and watching more than 850 times, I think. That was one I can remember watching with an entire family.
Oh, that's fantastic. Favorite family song, or was there a band you couldn't wait to introduce your kids to?
Oh, a band that I couldn't wait to introduce my kids to. There's a couple. There's AC/DC, there's Guns N' Roses, nice. There's Bruce Springsteen, there's a little bit of Beatles in there. There's just bands that I joke with them all the time with the music they listen. I said, all the music that I introduced you to, guys were actually playing instruments. They were on stage. They weren't in a studio with their fingers pressing buttons. Yeah. We joke all the time. My youngest is really the only one. He'll listen to AC/DC. He'll do Guns N' Roses. He's the only one that really took any of my advice.
Nice, man. Describe the perfect family vacation. Where would it be?
Down in the Keys, fishing on a boat. That's the perfect vacation for us. And we'll be doing it again in August. So I'll let you know how that one goes.
Nice, sir. And I know that there's so many different accolades, so many different favorite memories and all that in your soccer career, but is there one that is above all? Do you have one, or is like a surreal moment like in your career when you kind of look back?
Yeah, the Trinidad game, when we qualified in 1989 for the 1990 World Cup in Italy, only because the U.S. hadn't been at the World Cup for 40 years.
Yeah.
So when I read all the time, I see fans on social media, and of course, it's probably the worst gauge of fan opinions, is social media. But I read all the time. These are the darkest days in U.S. soccer history, and I'm like, man, they're clearly either 30 years old or younger, right?
Yeah.
They didn't live the darkest days, Yeah, look, it's gotten so big in this country. I mean, just even what I'm doing here with Allstate, I've been saying this I feel like I've been saying this for 6 years. Who'd have ever thought that companies like Allstate would come to the forefront and do things like this around the communities? Like, this was unheard of years ago, and now it's happening all over the U.S. So we're getting there. We're not completely there yet as a soccer nation, but man, are we getting closer.
Nice. And before I go into the last question, I just love your whole sky is falling on social media idea. That is so on point, Tony. Well said, man. And
yeah.
And lastly, what are the 3 top words your kids would describe you as a father?
Me? What would they describe me as a father?
Like
well, I don't really know.
Okay.
What I would hope, I guess, is, geez, that's a tough one, man. I just hope that I guess without having 3 words and describing words, just that I'm always there for them.
Nice, perfect.
I mean, that's what I would hope. I don't know what their answer would be. That's what I hope it would be.
Nice. People, make sure you follow Tony on Twitter at Meola1. Of course, put links where you can follow him. And also, go to allstate.com. Check out the Allstate Day for Play, because I think as parents, we always want to get our kids out there and active, and this is a great way, and especially what Tony and Allstate is doing, it's always a good time. So, Tony, thanks again so much for taking the time out of your busy day. Good luck with this program and continued success in the future, sir.
Thanks, Art. Appreciate it. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for listening to the Life of Dad Show. You know where to find us, lifeofdad.com, and on Twitter and Facebook.